drums being realistic is, I struggle with it as well. It's my study these days is working more on how to make my drums sound real, cuz like even in the track that I'm doing, right, it's like I have like okay sounds here, but I don't know if I'm that happy with them. Like I try and imitate drums without really like sounding too drummy. I and then like using like an echo delay as well, just to kind of add that slight texture here and there, so that way it doesn't sound so, you know, stable constantly. It made that little jumping, like, and then as well trying to use like a little automation here and there on some of those runs to you know, add a little bit of texture. You're yeah, it's like if this kick is my drummer legitimately, and that's his foot playing all those notes, but every note is perfect and sounds exactly the same, then what's the excitement in that drummer? I'm just dealing with a robot, and we're working in a digital environment, but we're, yeah, trying to make it sound realistic. So just keep practicing and hear it in your head, and keep it's really just about hearing it in your head and going from there, and then practice and listening, and you know, you're trying to make something digital sound real. And if you have any questions in particular on it, I'm happy to answer it. But it's a very yeah, like humanizing is one of those things. But if you can only humanize a sound to a certain extent, like if a sound sounds crappy, for lack of a better word, then even if I humanize it, it's just gonna sound like I'm beating a tin can into a microphone. And there's a time and place for that, but when I'm looking for something that's well produced, it's probably not this one. Um, unless I can modify it enough, then hey, I am open to all the ideas. But yeah, really keeping it interesting. And best thing to do as well is, I'm assuming if you're making the beats, don't the problem I think with FL is that FL relies too much on drag and drop. Whereas when I'm like in Logic, I'm actually, tapping out the notes and like trying to create, basically acting as though my finger is my foot, and trying to imitate myself as a drummer, finger drumming. FL, kind of when you just click and just, go through each one of the lights and say, I want the kick here, 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 here. Like, yeah, that's great. But, you don't get to be in the process of actually like making the music. And that's important, because the vibe is from start to finish. If your kicks are all, painted and programmed in, but your guitars are natural sounding, then you're probably going to have something weird going on there, because you're going to have one thing that sounds totally digital and one thing that sounds totally real. Well, you got to figure out how to make those digital things sound real, and that starts with performance first and foremost. And then you can, the beauty of MIDI in my mind isn't that it lets you skip the performance, it's that it lets you adjust the performance, and it lets you kind of detail it and fine tune it. But the performance is still the most important part, because that's where the actual emotion comes from, is when you sit down and when you actually play the thing. Otherwise, I mean, maybe there is an emotion I'm missing in clicking, but there's something to be said about the actual act of playing an instrument and doing the thing, and that's where vibe comes from. That's where that's where the life comes from, and yeah. So sometimes the best advice when it comes to drumming is just play it. Just play it, and if you start something and the drums sound weird, turn them off, and then just sit there and start air drumming, and just hear it in your head, and then put that onto the page. But yeah, don't painting stuff in. It'll give us a hard time, and I know that myself because I've experimented a lot with beat producing, and the ones I made in which I just kind of painted in all my hi-hats were definitely the ones that had a lot less of a feel to them than the ones that I actually performed and played and put myself into and really got into the process of. So yeah, that's what I would say. Play it. Play your heart out. That's where music comes from.